We're going to be in the book of Genesis this morning. Genesis chapter 28. Genesis 28. Last week we talked about valuing Jesus. And this morning we're going to talk about finding God. Book of Genesis, chapter 28. Several years ago, this was more than several, when I was back in seminary, so this would have been back in the mid-90s, I guess. So that's more than several, it's a couple of decades now. But there was a testimony that I had, that something happened to me back then that for many years I used this as a praise testimony in sermons and places that I went when I was ministering to the Virgin Islands. Always used this testimony as God's provision in my life, a way that I thought was just miraculous. And I don't think I ever told this story here. If I did, well, y'all gonna hear it again, because part of this message. But I was coming home from work pretty late in the night. This was in Pennsylvania, and I went to the ATM because I didn't have any cash. And back then, it wasn't like how it is now, where you had plastic for everything. You needed to have a little cash in your pocket every now and then for stuff. And I remember I went to the ATM, and I wanted to just take out $20. And this notification came up and said that I couldn't take out $20 because I only had $27 on my bank account, and because it was a checking account, you had to keep $25 on there. And I remember when I saw that notification, the screen was all red. They had to rub it in. And I saw that notification. I remember my heart just dropping because I didn't even have $20. And I felt, at those moments, you start to think about what are the immediate solutions to the problem. Like, does anybody owe me money? All right. Stuff like you're just trying to figure out, how am I going to get cash right now? Thought, well, I'm not going to get paid for another week. And I was driving home, and I felt really bad. I started to feel discouragement coming in, because, man, I don't even have this. And I drove up. I was sharing a little duplex we were renting with some other seminarians at the time. And I drove up to the little driveway, and I was in the car, and I was starting to feel pretty sorry for myself. And then this light went off. It wasn't Jesus. It was the fuel gauge in my car. That thing went on, and I didn't even realize that I didn't have any gas in my car, running on fumes. And at that moment, I was like, God, could you just give me a break? I don't have any money in my bank account, and now I didn't even realize that I had no gas in my car. I was discouraged before, but then I started to get angry at that point, and then you start to think all those crazy thoughts. I don't know what I thought I was doing, coming to seminary, all the things just start. I can't believe this is happening to me. You're getting upset. And I walked into the house. I opened the door. As soon as I opened the door, the phone rang. Oh, you guys know God's going to come through right there and then, right? You get a story like this. The phone rang. And it wasn't a bill collector. It was a friend of mine who took a class with me, and he was calling to find out what the assignments were. And so we were talking, and he said, Terrence, you don't sing very well. What's going on? And I told him what was happening. I didn't have any money, that I needed gas money. And he said, I didn't ask him for anything, but he said to me, look, I can't leave home right now, but if you can get here, I got $20 waiting for you that you can put gas in your car. I don't even think I said goodbye. I just hung the phone up, and gone, and at that time, $20 could fill your car up, man. I mean, fill it right up. And I always remember that blessing of $20. $20. Do you know how many times I shared that God of a $20 blessing with people. God of $20, man. And that thing, kind of gave me a little hope, encouraged me. But I've had some time to think about that $20 over the last several years. And let me tell you the reality of, I don't use that. I share it with you here, but I don't use that as a testimony anymore. Do you know why I only had $27 in my bank account? I only had $27 in my bank account because it was the middle of the winter. And our utility bills basically doubled. It gets cold in Pennsylvania. Not only had I paid the utility bills, I had also paid rent for the month. I had paid my car insurance, and I also went and bought groceries a few days before. That's why I only had $27. It was because everything else had been taken care of in my life. Now, I was $20 out. I think I did pretty good for having, the utilities double on you. But let me tell you about that. At the time, right, I was going to a church that if I had called the pastor and I had told him, Pastor, I need some gas money, he would have probably given me $50, not $20. And at the time, look, my parents, right, if I had called them and told them, Mom, Dad, I need $20 for gas. From all the way back in Barbados, my parents would have found a way to get $100 to me, forget 20. Right? Listen, this God of $20 that I boasted about for so long, he was way bigger than $20. Because that God had provided for me my rent, my utilities, my car insurance, and he had also provided so many other things. I had even paid my school bill off for that semester. All of that stuff God had provided for me, and here I was bragging about $20. God had done such great things in my life that if somehow, when I saw that ATM red notification come up, that you only got $27, I could have said, well, I paid my school bill, I paid my rent, I got groceries, paid off my car insurance, all right? I got all this other stuff taken care of, utilities are paid. God has been taking care of me for this whole year. What is $20 to God? I could have said that, but I didn't. I sat in that car and I panicked because I thought I did not even have $20 in cash. And then when that light went on, that just pushed me over the edge because all of a sudden I'm thinking I'm going to run out of gas and I can't even put $20, well, much less $5 in my gas tank. Why is it that I could not have seen all that God was doing in my life, but I got stuck on an ATM screen that said you only have $27? Why is it that after God had done so much for me in terms of providing everything that I was going to need, that when I saw that light come on the dash, that you don't have no gas in your car, why is it that caused me to stumble? Why could I not see God at work? Now, God provided the $20. But before I got to that $20, before I got to that little celebration of, oh, thank God for $20, there was a whole lot of fear. There was a whole lot of anger. There was a whole lot of frustration that went on in my life from that drive to the bank to the drive home and sitting in that car and wondering what I'm going to do next. That really put a darkness and a heaviness in my spirit. And for that moment, I was even questioning the goodness of God in my life. Why is it that we can't see the goodness of God in our life. There's a verse in Genesis chapter 28 and verse 16 that is sort of going to be the linchpin for this message this morning. But I want you all to see this verse on the screen. And I want for you all to think about this. Genesis chapter 28, verse 16. Could you guys pull that up? This is Jacob. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. God was in this place. The King James tells us, and I did not know. How many times in our lives, in your life, has God been at work, but you were not aware of it? How many times has God been moving in your life, but you were in a situation or something happened to you, and the last thing on your mind was the hand of God in my life? How many times have you been unaware of God? You know, there's some Christians. There's some Christians that they are the I just trust God Christians. And those are the folks that they just, when they tell you about their life, is like, hey, I just trust God. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I just got to believe God. And you probably know people like that, and something good happens, well, you just got to trust God. Some bad happened, well, we just got to trust God. They're the just trust God Christians. But you know, when you talk to them, there's not a whole lot of relationship going on in their life with God. They're Christians that they just roll with the punches. It's not that, you know, there's any interaction with God. There's no kind of adaptation. There's no kind of dynamism. There's nothing organic. There's nothing relatable. They just roll with the punches. Whatever happens, happens. And they just say, well, it's God, I'm just going to take it. But there's no growth. There's no insight. There is nothing organic happening between them and God. I just trust God. And then there's the I know God Christians. The I know God Christians are these Christians who they ain't atheists. But they don't expect God to be doing nothing in their life. And they know God. They'll come to church. And, you know, they believe that God exists. But they're not expecting the hand of God to be at work in their lives every day, because they had some situations in their life where they expected God to do something and God never came through. And somewhere along the line, they came to believe that, look, I have no problem believing that God is real. But I just know that when it comes to my life, I have to handle the big things in life. I can't expect God to show up and God to get me out of trouble. I can't expect God to be doing this and doing that. I just know that I have to live my life the best that I can. I'll pray, you know, you worship God, and yeah, I know that God exists, but I don't expect God to be doing nothing for me. Well, then there's the I live for God group. And the I live for God group, those are the people who actually wear God glasses. That they actually see everything in this life through the prism that God is real and that God is at work and that God is going to do something through me, in me, with me, in my life. And they commit themselves to that type of existence, that I live for God. The life that has been given to me is a life that I dedicate back in service to Him. Now, when you think about those three groups, which one are you? Well, don't put your hand in here. Don't say nothing. But just think for yourself and just be honest. Which group do you find yourself in? Or maybe you're one of those hop, skip, and jump Christians. You in one of those groups at some time or the other. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you can't hop in between them. All right? We have to come to the place where we see God. Like Jacob said, I was here, and I didn't even know that God was here. All our lives are like that, in the good times or in the bad times. If God is there, the problem is that we don't always recognize the hand of God. And even sometimes when we kind of squeeze a little blessing out, you're all like me. You're squeezing $20 out when God already provided $2,000 for you. And so let us reflect now on Genesis chapter 28. And we're going to see the flow of this story, and hopefully by the end of this, you might be encouraged to find God in your life. And so Genesis chapter 28. We're not going to go through every single verse. I'm just going to recap some stuff here for you until we get to what Jacob himself went through. But in Genesis chapter 28, verse 1 through verse 5, Jacob has just received a blessing from his father Isaac, and he is now about to begin the life that God has planned for him. But his father and his mother tell him, you can't begin that plan where you're living right now. It has to start with you starting a family of your own, and you can't start your family here. So Isaac tells his son Jacob, God's going to bless you. God's going to build a great nation through you. But it doesn't start here. Now, up until this point, Jacob, he has had no experience with God. He doesn't know God like his father knows him, and he certainly doesn't know God like his grandfather Abraham knows him. He has just been told about God all his life. And now his father is telling him, you got to pack your bags, you got to move on. Because God is going to bless you, but it ain't going to happen here. And Jacob, to his credit, listens to his father. And he steps out. And he goes in search of this wife. His father tells him where it is he needs to go. And this is where you're going to find a wife. And so Jacob, he packs his little bundle up, and he's on the move. Now, I want you to show you now where the context for this verse starts. And it starts all the way down in verse 10. And I want you to notice what happens to him. Jacob, he's on this journey now. Just him. He's going across the wilderness. And in verse 10, it says, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. This is where he's going to go to start his family. And when he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can anybody sleep on a stone? A stone is a pillow, man. You got to be one tough guy for you to fall asleep on a rock. What happens here is that this place, there's nothing special about this place. The only reason that he stops there is not because there's some beam of light coming down from the sky. It's not because there's a burning bush. The only reason that he stops there is because the sun has set. He can't see where he's going to go, so he decides, I'm going to make camp right here. And then there's nothing about this place that says comfort or that says relaxation. All you got around him is just rocks. Rocks that he's going to try to sleep on. He's going to try to rest himself on rocks. There's nothing special about this place. There is nothing that would make anyone believe that anything significant is going to happen here. Oh, but that's up until God shows up. And this is not what we have in verse 12. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples of the earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Now we get to verse 16. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. So he picks a spot, he goes to sleep. No plans, no commitment to anything. He's just resting. And it is in this moment that we see this vision of God comes in a dream. And maybe you have heard or you have seen art on Jacob's ladder. This is what it is talking about. This ladder going from earth to heaven, angels going up, angels coming down, and God is standing at the top. And the significance is, this is what Jesus talked about even in his Gospels, the significance of the angels going up and down the ladder is that they offer the prayers of men up to God, and then they also bring down the blessings of God to men. That is what the imagery is. Angels going up, carrying the petitions of people, and angels coming down, bringing the blessings of God. That is what God is trying to get Jacob to understand, is that angels are just not coming down with the blessings. You have to be in the place where you're going to be sending something up to God. For God, it has always been about relationship. His plan is always grounded in relationship. His desires for us always grounded in relationship. It's always two ways with God, going up and coming down. But God expects engagement with him. And God's going to bless. God has a plan for Jacob. But he wants Jacob to see the plan in light of how God has designed it. And when Jacob gets a hold of this dream, it so impacts him that he wakes up and he says, man, God was here and I did not know it. I was not aware of it. You see, up until this point, he had only heard about God from other people. Up until this point, his father and his grandfather, they told him about God. But now he finds himself confronted with the reality of God. And it impacts his life from that time on. The time he chooses his family, and you read the rest of the book of Genesis and how God works through his life and the things that God does through him. It all started right here with God giving him this revelation. God was in this place and I did not even know it. Now you see, after he has this revelation, he sanctifies this place and he says, this is clearly the house of God. And it is in this spot that God says, I'm going to bless you with this land that you're sleeping on right now. He thought that he just stopped there because the sun has set. But this was all in God's plan for him. As God reveals all that he wants to do, and Jacob is just overwhelmed with the goodness of God in his life. Let me tell you why we don't see God. Let me tell you, we don't see God because we don't focus on him. That's why you don't see him. That's why I didn't see him. We don't see God because our sin is bigger than God is. We don't see God because our problems are bigger than God is. We don't see God because our stresses and our challenges and our plans are bigger than God is. Don't you ever go through life sometimes and you feel as if you are more sinner than you are saint? No. What am I thinking? You all don't know anything about that kind of stuff. Let me find a different example. I don't know. You all don't know about that kind of stuff, man. Do you ever go through life and you just feel as if all you have are problems? Don't you have to squint sometimes to try to find a blessing in your life? Don't you feel as if every day of your life is you just getting out of one problem only to enter into another one? And when you try to define your life, you can't ever think about it in terms of blessing, in terms of God working. You just know, here are the people that I hate. Here's the situations that I don't like. Here are the issues that I don't want. Don't you feel as if that's your life sometimes? Because that's all you're focusing on. You're focusing on the light on the dashboard, and you're focusing on the notification on the ATM screen. That's what your focus is. You focus on all the things that you have done wrong, you shouldn't have done. That is your focus. And that is why you can't see God. But if there is some way that you can reorient your mind to look for God, then I guarantee you, you're going to start seeing him in so many different areas of your life. Because God is there. God is there, like Jacob said, surely God was in it, and I was not aware of it. Listen to me. You do not have to create a life for God to come in and bless you. How many of you have been thinking, the reason why God is not at work in my life is because I commit this particular sin or these particular sins. I just can't get this issue cleared up in my life. And I believe that only if I could get this fixed, God would be able to work through me. Oh, man, let me find another example. Y'all don't know about that. Let me find another example. How many of you, right, think that, only if you could get this particular job or you could get this situation worked out in your life, whatever it is, that this is what is really holding back the blessings of God in your life. And if you could just fix this, then God would be able to do what he wants to do in your life. Do you feel that way at times? Let me tell you something. God showed up in the middle of a desert. There was nothing there. Jacob did not have to create anything for God. God showed up because Jacob was there. Just like God is going to show up in your life, not because you live good, not because you have done everything right, but because of you, God will show up. In your faults, in your brokenness, in your strengths, in your weaknesses, in your talents, in your gifts, God is going to show up because of you. That's it. Because of you. Do you know why? Because God has a plan for your life. Just like how he had a plan for Jacob. Just like how he had a plan for Paul and for the disciples. He got a plan for you. And if you can focus on the plan instead of the problem, then maybe you're going to start seeing God in your life. Because God is there. The problem is that you're just not aware of him. So you got to get to that place where there is that awareness of God in your life. And it is not complicated, It's not complicated. We see this plan right here with Jacob. It starts off by him listening to what other people said who had an experience with God. He didn't know about God for himself, but his father told him something about how God works, because his father and his grandfather knew something about the hand of God, about the voice of God in their lives. And his father told him, oh, God's going to bless you, but God ain't going to bless you here, so you need to move on out. And then when he found himself in that place of listening to those who knew something about God, he put himself in that place where God then gave him that revelation. And he then went, oh, well, this is just a dream. I probably should not have had that barbecue camel meat last night, and it probably just set me off. He didn't come up with excuses as to why God is not going to talk to him like we do. Something happens that we can't believe is the blessings of God. Why? Because we got too many issues. Because we failed too much in the past. Because we done these things. Oh, God not going to bless me. This can't be a blessing of God. This just got to be good luck. This just got to be something. I can't rely on this. I can't bank on this. Oh, no, Jacob, man, when he saw this, he was like, this is God. And he received it. He said after that, God, if you're going to work on my life as you promised, then I'm going to do everything I can for you. That's what we have in the latter part of Genesis chapter 28. You gotta give God a chance in your life. And that when God does reveal himself to you, don't explain it away. Don't think that you don't deserve the blessing of God or the voice of God in your life. You deserve it by just being you. God putting you here, God designing you and crafting you, putting his plan into action in your life. You see the frustration, you see the mistakes, you see the situations that just went all wrong in your life. You wanted things to go different, you had different plans. Situations didn't work out like the way you thought. God's plan is at work in you. The blessings come. You feel as if they're overwhelming. I can't believe how doors of opportunity have opened for me. I cannot believe the resources that are coming my way. That's God's plan at work in your life. You see, God provides even through problems. It is through these situations in life sometimes that God needs to orient us so that we can see him. Jacob, God's going to bless you, but he ain't going to bless you here. He's living with his father and his mother. He has everything that he needs. All the resources are there. All the provision is there. All the love is there. But his father tells him, you got to step out. You got to step out into the unknown. But it's only when he is faced with that uncertainty that he can see God for himself. And that's the same thing that's going to happen to you. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with me. You thinking right now that because things are not working your way, that somehow this is the absence of God in your life? It is the absolute opposite. There's a story that was all over anything to do with a Christian. There was this poem that always used to come up on plaques, on books, on cups. How many of you remember the Footprints poem? I want to remind you of it today. I want to remind you of this story because maybe there's some of you who never heard this. And maybe there's some of you who just need a reminder. One night, a man had a dream. He dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene, he noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to him and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints in the sand. He noticed that many times along the path of his life, there was only one set of footprints. He also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times in his life. This really bothered him, and he questioned the Lord about it. Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there is only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you most, you would leave me. The Lord replied, my son, my precious child, I love you, and I would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you see only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. God's carrying you all right now. You might not be able to see it, but that's because you're not looking for Him. You're too focused on all the stuff that's going wrong in your life for right now. You got to reorient your spiritual eyes and realize that God's hand is at work because of His promises to you. I'm going to ask you to bow your heads here for a few moments. And I want you to get your sights on God. Or maybe your sights have been on the needs that you have. Bills that need to be paid. The concern about that doctor's visit. Maybe there's a physical issue with your body. It's been causing you to look at yourself and your problems like never before. And the moment that you think about these things, each second that you focus on them, they just seem to get bigger and bigger. The people in your life that are causing you distress, they just seem to get stronger and stronger. The cares just seem to get heavier and heavier. Your life feels so hard right now. It feels as if God is not real. I want to encourage you. God's right there with you. It's just that your eyes have been focused not on Him, but on all the things that you think are wrong with you in your life. You need to get your eyes off of it. And that's going to happen when God is going to reveal Himself to you, if you can give Him that opportunity. For Jacob, it meant getting up and leaving the place that he knew and loved and finding himself in a quiet and barren place. But that's where God showed up. And God is going to show up in your life, but you got to give Him a chance. And so in this quiet moment right now, I just want you to just talk to God for a minute. And I just want you to tell Him, God, right now my problems are bigger to me than you are. You tell Him, God, right now, I feel my pain more than I can feel your presence. And I want that to change. God, would you help me to see you? God, would you help me to recognize your presence? God, would you let me see you so clearly and so profoundly that I can't question your hand in my life. Now, as you go throughout this week, put yourself in a place to be reminded of who God is. Whether it is from people who you know God, or just your recollections of the flashes of God's presence in your life that maybe you have witnessed in the past. Refresh your mind, refresh your thoughts with the hand of God. And you're going to start seeing his image appearing. It's going to be like a flicker at first. But that situation, that person, that problem that was just so real and so bright, it's going to start resonating with a different image. And it's going to be the image of God, the possibilities of God, using that very person, that very problem, that very need to show you just how great he is. Just be ready. Just be ready. Just be ready. Hallelujah. Father, we just want to thank you that you are a God who reveals himself. You are not hidden. You are not obscure. Father, you are right there, shining in your glory. But our eyes have been in a different direction, Lord. Our eyes have been on other people and other things. And so you have been in this place, but we were not aware of it because we weren't looking. Weren't looking for you, Lord. Well, today is the day when we start going on that search. We're going to be like detectives, finding every clue that points us to you, God. I pray, Father, that you would just help us. Help us, Lord, to sense your presence like never before. That you would instill a seed in our minds right now of just how good you have been. And may you allow it to take root and flourish in our hearts. God, would you just take us step by step to the revelation of you, that we realize that there is no pain, there is no struggle, there is no issue, there is no blessing that is ever bigger than our God. And may you become everything to us. We thank you. And we answer all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Praise